This video contains spoilers for the first 3 Pantheons. I'm very critical of Hollow Knight's boss encounters. That's because the game has one of the best boss design philosophies I've ever seen in a video game. So when that philosophy is broken, leading to lower quality encounters, I tend to feel a little disappointed. And such was the case when I first encountered Sly at the end of Pantheon 3. I died a very frustrating death. God, I hated that boss when I first encountered him. And my goodness, was I absolutely wrong to. I'm Holland, and this is Behind the Boss. You know that feeling when someone just gets you? You present them with a thought or an idea, and they're able to contribute with thoughts of their own because you're both seeing things from similar perspectives? That's how I feel about Team Cherry 99% of the time. They present me with an awesome video game experience and then keep following it up with ideas that just fit the game so well. It's like a matter of course principle that someone who really understands their game will keep adding content to it that strikes the perfect balance between novelty and fitting people's expectations. The 3 Nailmaster fights follow this matter of course principle precisely. When I met the Nailmasters in-game, I always did have it in the back of my mind that I would love to be able to fight them. Or maybe I didn't, and that's just a Mandela effect created by the fact that the Nailmaster's encounters fit so perfectly into the game. In any case, being able to fight Oro, Mato, and Shio in Godhome was, and still is, an absolutely terrific part of the Godmaster expansion. And of course, we can't forget the leader of the pack, Nail Sage Sly. Before Godhome, it was revealed to us that Sly was in fact the great Nail Sage who taught his pupils how to fight. But actually seeing him during his prime time is just so damn cool. So all that's to say that when I first met Sly, I loved the concept of him as the final boss of the 3rd Pantheon. Once the fight began, however, I'd legitimately never been more confused in my entire time playing this game. And Sly completely wrecked me. So let's start by talking about what Sly does wrong. Returning to Sly for this video, I played a lot of matches against him in the Hall of Gods to refresh my knowledge of the fight. But I also wanted to get good enough at fighting him to be able to determine which of his moves felt straight up unfair and which ones I just needed to get better at dodging. I died a lot more to Sly than I won against him, the reason being a combination of him being one of the harder bosses in the game, plus the fact that I mostly avoided using charms and played exclusively on Radiant. Playing against bosses on Radiant is, in my opinion, a great way to spot poorly designed or unusually difficult attacks. That's because on Radiant, you can never just shrug off getting hit. You're always immediately stopped in your tracks when you take damage and given time to think about what just happened. Did you die because the boss acted unintuitively or unfairly, or did you make a mistake? To my great surprise, the overwhelming number of deaths I endured felt completely like my own fault. I'll get more into that later on. For now, I want to focus on the bad parts of Sly. I think Sly has a few straight up unfair quirks, which I'll list first, but more noticeably, I think he's one of the most unintuitive bosses in the entire game, which I'll discuss afterwards. Here are the 3 cases of unfairness that I discovered fighting Sly. Number 1. Pogo timings for Cyclone Slash are really frustrating, inconsistent, and sometimes outright unfair. During this move, Sly moves upwards and gains a large damaging hitbox. He can be pogoed while doing this, which is quite fun to do, but because he moves vertically and changes his vertical movement speed throughout the attack, I found it really easy to mistime my pogos and get hit. As a cherry on top, when hitting a wall during this attack, Sly bounces off it and becomes even more unpredictable. In this clip, he's literally at the top of the screen, allowing me no space to pogo and killing me off instantly. This attack is thankfully quite easily avoided, making it not a huge problem. However, I'd like it much better if Sly kept a consistent ascending speed, allowing you to more consistently poke on him during the attack. Number 2. Time between the slash combo's telegraph and the attack itself gives you barely any time to react. Perhaps it is possible to, but in contrast to the Great Slash's telegraph, which is also quite quick, but which you can definitely react to, this one I just could not dodge if I wasn't already far enough away to not get hit by the first swing. Number 3. And finally, by being able to travel extremely quickly through the air without a proper telegraph, Sly does in fact commit the repositioning problem. This is more or less the same type of issue as I just went over a moment ago. Lack of proper telegraphing not allowing you to react to the boss. If you don't know what the repositioning problem is, go watch either of these videos about it, link down below, get in the loop, man. However, it's really important for me to stress that Sly is actually one of the less severe offenders of the repositioning problem. He will almost never simply jump into you like Lost Kin or Crystal Guardian, which greatly contributes to reducing the number of times you get screwed over by his lightning fast jumps. It's like Team Cherry realized when making him that totally unhinged repositioning moves really weren't that fun to go up against, and then went the extra mile to make sure Sly tried to avoid you when repositioning. That said, crazy stuff like this still can happen, but I mean it when I say that Sly is much fairer about his repositioning than similar bosses. Good job, Sly.
Thanks, man. I really do my best.
No, you're doing great. Just get out of my video. So, those were the 3 unfair parts of Sly, which you could effectively limit to just 2 complaints. Cyclone Slash moving inconsistently, and Sly not always properly telegraphing his attacks. You might think that actually sounds pretty alright, and yeah, I think it is actually quite alright, meaning Sly is, in my opinion, all things considered, a pretty fair boss fight. However, my main problem with Sly isn't that he's unfair, it's that his fight is very unintuitive. I've talked previously about reaction time and intuition being 2 major components of what makes a boss in Hollow Knight fun. Reaction time, what I sometimes call fairness, is the ability to respond to an attack so you don't get killed. Again, Sly is actually pretty damn good about allowing you to do this. However, the other component, the intuition component, he doesn't score as many points on. However good a boss I think Sly is once you get to know him, getting to know him is the tough part. As I talked about in the intro, Sly absolutely wrecked me first time through, and many times after that. And it wasn't just wrecked as in losing the first encounter because you haven't trained against the boss yet. No, it was total carnage. I had absolutely no idea how to dodge any of Sly's attacks. So let me give you just a few examples of Sly's unintuitive nature. Due to his lightning quick telegraphing, you should always keep a minimum distance to Sly until he finishes an attack. That isn't immediately apparent though. Because Sly is so small, it can be hard to notice his telegraphs. Sly will always jump to the corner of the room to use dash slash until he won't. Perhaps as the result of a bug, Sly will rarely use the dash slash in the middle of the arena, which will make it look like he's using the Great Slash. That brings down his consistency. The Great Slash hitbox is significantly larger than visually indicated. Understanding how to counterplay the slash combo can be really tricky at first. When Sly performs his slash combo, he will not change direction on the final swirl slash, although he will during the first 2. And understanding how to engage with Sly's final phase without taking any damage may take a long time. I'm almost certain there are more issues of intuition, but these will do for a start. Now, apart from the issue with lack of telegraphing, dash slash inconsistency, and perhaps the size of telegraphs, none of these examples actually get on my nerves anymore. In fact, Sly not changing his direction of movement on the 3rd strike in the slash combo is a really fun quirk to play against. Once I found out that this was how it worked, I started taking advantage of it, making my attempts a lot more fun and consistent. But here's the thing, I have beaten Sly on Radiant, and I did that, over a year ago? And I never knew that was how he worked until making this video. I just never picked up on that fact. And that's my point. The problem with the unintuitive nature of Sly's attacks is not that they ruin the fight, it's simply that they make it way harder to learn it. But as I'll get to later, I'd take an unintuitive but largely fair fight over an intuitive but unfair fight any day of the week. So to quickly summarize, Sly has a few problems with fairness, namely his lack of telegraphing on some attacks as well as an inconsistent Cyclone Slash. But other than that, most of the frustrations that I've felt going up against him have been the result of not understanding why I got punished, what I did wrong. And that's because the little guy has some strange quirks with his movement that, once figured out, makes him a lot more fun to fight. Now I want to get to the good parts. Sure, Sly can be both unfair and unintuitive at times, but I actually, really, truly do enjoy his fight. And that's because he gets so much better once you start to learn the ins and outs of the encounter. Now, I'm by no means fully confident in the fight, and I'm sure a lot of you are gonna know a few tricks that I don't. But even at my current skill level, when going up against Sly, I'm really enjoying myself at almost every moment of the fight, and I think this is why. Sly is very consistent. Once you understand how to respond to each of his attacks, the fight goes by in a predictable, conveyor belt style manner. Similarly to a lot of other bosses that I generally find fun to go up against, like Soulmaster and Mantis Lords. Okay, so here's the strategy. You stand back, letting Sly make the first move. If he uses Great Slash, you avoid it and sneak in a hit. If he uses Dash Slash, you jump over him in the middle of the arena and sneak in a hit. If he uses Cyclone Slash, you probably just wait it out. If he jumps up and slams downward, you might feel like you can't counter him, but just recently, I've started throwing in a Shade Soul and then dashing toward him at the end of his attack, sneaking in a hit, then dashing away. It feels very risky, but if you're good at it, I'm pretty sure it's all skill and no luck, which feels awesome. And finally, if he uses the slash combo, you have a few different ways of avoiding him. Bait him in one direction, then either prepare to outrun the third slash, go above it, or go below him and strike him when he falls to the ground. If you're quick, you can sneak in 2 nail swings even without quick slash. Part of what makes Sly fun is that you can counter all of his attacks. And I know that some people don't like waiting for the boss to take his action before you can engage, which I totally understand. But because Sly acts so quickly, it really doesn't feel like an issue to me. So the fight against Sly feels both quick, engaging, and usually very fair. When I mess up, I almost always feel like I did something wrong, like forgetting how to respond to the slash combo or getting greedy with my counterattacks. And that's a great feeling. I really like it when a boss can kill me multiple times in a row and yet still allow me to feel like I could have reasonably acted differently. That's good difficulty, making you feel like it was your fault that you died and that you could do better next time. I've deliberately avoided talking about Sly's second phase all the way up until now, and this is why. I think it serves as a perfect metaphor for the entire fight. Once you deal enough damage, Sly will enter a frenzy. While frenzied, Sly will only perform one attack until he's defeated. This one attack sees him bouncing around the arena a few times before going right next to you and swinging his nail all around him. After he stops swinging, he will return to bouncing around the arena. It's laughably hard to understand how to deal with this attack on your first few times through. So much so that I'm not even sure I figured it out myself. Because once you finally get to this phase, you're just dead within seconds and have to try all over again. But once you do figure out how to respond, which is by standing in the middle of the arena, dashing out of the way and then countering just before Sly retreats, it feels like one of the most skill-based phases of any boss. You wait for Sly's attack, dodge, then respond. And it can be damn hard too, because the windows of dodging and counterattacking are really short. If you're not wearing Long Nail or Mark of Pride and don't have enough soul going into this phase, you're gonna have to be super specific with your timings to land hits on the boss. But that's all difficulty, and in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with a very hard boss as long as he's acting fairly, which, for the most part, I think Sly is. He just really likes to pretend that he's not acting fairly by being one of the least intuitive Hollow Knight bosses. But get to know him a little better, and I assure you that he can be one of the most fun boss fights in the entire game. Just don't try to beat him without any charms like I did, because you'll legitimately, no joke, be stuck on that last phase for over half the fight. Holy Christ. Thank you so much for watching. Unintuitive but largely fair, that's my final verdict for Sly. And I definitely take that over intuitive but unfair every time. If you want to see my channel grow, remember to like and subscribe. And if you're interested in more exciting Hollow Knight content, I've got a series called Charm Forging where I design my own custom charms for Hollow Knight, which you can find a link to in the description. Feel free to let me know what you think about Sly in the comments below. And have a wonderful day.
Bye!